Revealed. The successes that led to my dad banning me from Christmas, a touching transformation. Jake Miller leaned back in his office chair, the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead flickering like the hope in his heart. The robust buzz of Maplewood Hospital enveloped him as he stared blankly at his computer screen. This year he had reached new heights, earning accolades that should be a source of pride, yet they weighed on him like a lead anchor. How could success slip from glory to an emotional void? Did climbing the corporate ladder really mean severing ties with the roots that molded him into the man he'd become? It was only weeks before Christmas, and he had put his heart into inviting his father to his first corporate Christmas dinner, thinking it might draw an invisible line closer to the man who had raised him. Jake's fingers drummed anxiously against the polished desk. It's all he could think of, and now it felt like an empty gesture. What had he been trying to prove? An image of his dad, laboring tirelessly as a mechanic, memories blended with the smell of his famous gingerbread, would shatter at the thought of rejection. His own achievements were like fragile decorations on a tree, beautiful yet easily breakable. Just as he was wrestling with these feelings, a call disrupted his thoughts. Jake, his dad's voice on the line, sent a chill through him. I can't make it. This isn't who I am anymore. I can't be there this year. In fact, I think it's best if you don't come home for Christmas either. A hefty silence pressed on Jake's chest. The words collided and echoed like a bad joke. Banning him? Banning family gatherings because of a success that seemed to create a rift larger than he ever expected? Was this the consequence of ambition? Was he losing his father's love for climbing a staircase of awards? In that moment, Jake felt an abyss forming, a clash of who he wanted to be and who he'd become. Nights filled with isolation loomed ahead. Guilt clawed at him, uncovering fears of inadequacy, not just as a son, but as a person. He thought about the phone calls he'd avoided, the friendships jeopardized in his relentless pursuit of validation. Did his father perceive his victories as betrayals? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each breath felt heavy as Jake wandered through a labyrinth of past Christmas memories, late nights of laughter melding with his father's sighs after long days. Could he truly abandon those cherished moments for a career? But another voice whispered, urging him to reclaim those directives of success, those titles that made him feel important and worthy. Were those ambitions really his, or had they been shaped by whatever frail dreams an unseeable father harbored for him? Jake stood at this emotional crossroads, forehead creased in a tense frown. As Christmas approached, so did an ever-deepening divide. The man he once idolized had become a stranger. Another point of tension, another factual statistic. With unanswered questions hanging like mistletoe in the air, the decision of which path to tread weighed on him like snow on an ice-laden branch. Would the resolve of his heart be buried underneath layers of professionalism? As lights blinked on around Maplewood, he found himself yearning to bridge a distance that felt impossible, a bridge to find his way home, or would he forever be haunted by the unresolved echoes of laughter now turned chilly as he stared out at the dimly lit street, searching for the warmth of a place he might never return to? Jake sat in the dim glow of his office, the hour growing late and the hospital's bustle fading to a low murmur. He was lost in thought, deliberating his father's words until they played back in his mind, sharper each time. Banned. What did that even mean? He felt a swell of indignation rise within him, wrestling against the hurt that festered just beneath the surface. The accolades, the promotions, everything he sacrificed to reach this point of success, seemed to twist like a knife in his gut when compared to those memories of joyful Christmas mornings filled with love and laughter. With a sudden surge, Jake propelled himself from his chair, determined to unearth the root of his turmoil. He had invested so much of his energy into gaining recognition and climbing the ranks that he neglected his own identity. The struggle to appease his father's dreams morphed into an internal battle of pride versus connection, a battle that had warped his reality. Deciding it was time for action, he reached for his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating at first. He was about to dial his father's number when a new wave of doubt washed over him. What could he possibly say that would mend this rift? An apology felt insincere. A confirmation of failure he refused to entertain. Instead, he reached for the stubbornly unopened box on his desk. Inside lay the remnants of his childhood aspirations, photographs and heartfelt letters from his father that had accompanied them through thick and thin. As he sifted through the contents, Jake's heart began to race a mixture of nostalgia and hope. Each item held a story, a moment that encapsulated the essence of who he was before career ambitions clouded his perception. Looking at a frayed photograph of their last fishing trip, Jake remembered the laughter they'd shared, the excitement in his father's voice as they talked about dreams for the future. It was time to reclaim that identity. The realization hit him sudden and profound. His dad didn't disapprove of his success, he disapproved of the distance it created. It was from there that Jake felt a flicker of resolve emerge. He tapped into something deep within, a drive for reconciliation rather than resentment. Jake grabbed a notepad and poured his heart onto the pages. He began to articulate his feelings, how he had become lost in ambitions without bringing his father into the fold. He had forgotten the values that shaped him: hard work, integrity, and familial bonds. As he crafted the letter, he wrestled with the emotions that surfaced. Would this message be a step toward healing, or a futile action doomed to misinterpretation? The more he wrote, the more his clarity grew. He stared at the words, capturing both vulnerability and strength, an admission of wanting to share his journey, not just the accolades that accompanied it. Jake postured himself to ride this wave of newfound conviction. He could not allow fear or pride to dictate his actions any longer. He would invite his father for an honest conversation, unfiltered by pretense or expectation. With each stroke of the pen, he reassured himself that he was more than his corporate persona. He was a son, a man wanting to seek a forgotten connection. As he folded the letter and sealed it with determination, his resolve solidified. He would not simply await his father's response. He was prepared to confront the emotions head-on and reclaim what it meant to be part of his family. Jake couldn't ignore the tangling thread of anxiety that remained as he placed the letter into an envelope. The next step would not just be about words, it would demand vulnerability. Inspired by courage, he understood change had to start with him. But the question loomed heavy. Would his father soften enough to hear him? Or would the divide deepen, leaving Jake standing at a threshold he feared to cross? With a heavy sigh, he leaned back in his chair, staring once more at the flashing lights of Maplewood Hospital. The moment had come to face his fears, but it also had the potential to rewrite his story entirely. Filled with trepidation yet discouragement tempered by hope, Jake pondered whether this act would just be the beginning or the end of his father's love. Throughout the following days, the envelope with the letter sat heavy in Jake's pocket, a constant reminder of the tumultuous emotions swirling inside him. Each time he reached for his phone or glanced at the hallway leading to the hospital exit, he felt a wave of anxiety crash over him. It was as if the weight of unspoken words pressed down on his chest, stifling his breath. His usual confidence began to falter, swallowed by a growing fear of the unknown. Jake threw himself into work, searching for escape in patient files and complex diagnoses. Yet, no amount of professional distractions could stave off the gnawing sense of emptiness. He watched his colleagues engage in conversations filled with warmth and laughter, and a longing welled up within him. Each jovial exchange only exacerbated his isolation, forcing him to confront the reality that professional success without personal connection left him in a hollow state. Remembering his father's pride in his accomplishments fueled an inner conflict. To his father, Jake's achievements were a symbol of success, yet the same ambitions were the very source of their estrangement. The paradox weighed ominously on his thoughts. Was he merely fulfilling a legacy or sacrificing parts of himself in the process? The question plagued him, challenging the foundations of who he thought he was. As clarity began to dawn, Jake realized that the conversation he had planned with his father needed to transcend apologies. It had to embody a full exchange of their experiences, hopes, and the pain they each felt. He was no longer merely aiming to mend a broken relationship, but attempting to bridge the chasm of generations. This endeavor required vulnerability, something he had always equated with weakness. But now, in the shadows of his own doubts, vulnerability felt like the only path forward. Jake wrestled with how to initiate the critical conversation. The fragmented memories of shared moments with his father surged through his mind like vivid flashbacks. The fishing trips, the backyard barbecues, those evenings spent answering questions about life while roasting marshmallows, they formed the foundation of their bond. With determination, he found himself drafting a new plan. Rather than leaning solely on the letter, he decided to invite his father to meet him face to face, a neutral ground, perhaps a diner they used to frequent, where simplicity would fill the silence they both feared. Fueled by this new strategy, he rehearsed in front of the mirror, focusing on authentic expression instead of perfectionism. Every time he spoke the words aloud, the tension lessened, replaced by a burgeoning acceptance of the fear that came with sincerity. The echo of his father's laughter haunted him, but now morphed into something more profound, a motivation to break the barrier between them. On the morning he planned to send the new invitation, Jake's heart thundered in his chest. The envelope from days prior remained untouched on his desk, but now felt symbolic of his fear rather than his hope. As he opened his email to draft a new message, he realized this was not simply about reaching out. It was about reclaiming his past while stepping into his future. Would his father embrace this opportunity? Or would Jake face rejection yet again? With a surge of courage, he typed swiftly, the words flowing like a dam had broken. He pressed send, convinced that today marked the beginning of a potential reconciliation, no matter how daunting the prospect appeared. Yet, even as he took this significant step, a flicker of doubt crept in. Would his father be willing to meet him halfway? Would his nostalgia for the past fulfill a promise for the future? Or was the longing for connection merely a mirage in his mind? Chilled with uncertainty, Jake braced himself for whatever came next, knowing he was now irrevocably set on a path towards vulnerability and discovery. The moment of truth had finally arrived, but dread lingered in the recesses of his heart. Jake's mind raced through the possibilities as he awaited his father's response. Each hour stretched into an eternity, punctuated only by the ringing of the hospital phone or the hastened footsteps of nurses on their rounds. The sterile white walls felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the warmth he yearned to find in personal connection. With every glance at his inbox, hope wavered between exhilaration and frustration, an emotional pendulum that mirrored his inner turmoil. The day dragged on, a seemingly endless loop of rounds and paperwork, but Jake couldn't wholly focus. His mind drifted back to the message he had sent, a small yet monumental step toward healing. He recognized the growing distance not just between him and his father, but within himself. Achievements in surgery, commendations from supervisors, these were hollow victories when faced with the void left by family estrangement. Success felt insufficient, a mere shadow of the fulfillment he sought. On his lunch break, Jake sat in the hospital cafeteria and observed people around him. A father joked with his daughter over fries, their laughter echoing in the room, serving as a harsh reminder of his own lack of familial ties. Gripping his fork, he wrestled with the realization that for all his professional accolades, he felt a heavy disconnection from those he loved. It was an unsettling juxtaposition, the fulfillment of a career versus the despair of personal isolation. Determined not to let the emotional weight pull him down, he made a conscious choice to actively engage his feelings rather than avoid them. He found himself jotting down thoughts in a small notebook, a practice he started after his university days, but had abandoned under the pressures of adult life. "What does success mean to me?" he wrote, followed closely by "What am I afraid of in my relationship with Dad?" The simple act of writing felt liberating, each question a stepping stone toward understanding his own motives. And the subsequent days, he embraced this new routine. Sometimes he scribbled reflections on his lunch break, other times late at night when the hospital was quiet and still. His words became a map, guiding him through the murky waters of doubt and familial expectations. A pattern emerged. Deep-seated fears of inadequacy were intertwined with his father's expectations. The very traits that led him to excel in his career, the relentless drive, the desire to please, were the same that had distanced him from his family. Jake didn't just want to reach out to his father. He wanted to show him the man he had become. Not through accolades but through authenticity. He began preparing for the meeting more intentionally, visualizing not just the conversation, but also the emotions he needed to convey. He pictured his father's face, expected lines of confusion, irritation, but also a flicker of hope. This realization anchored him, pushing him to confront his fears head-on. Finally, A notification buzzed on his phone. His father had responded. Heart racing, he opened the message, reading it several times as his emotions swung wildly between anticipation and fear. Would this moment serve as a pivot for reconciliation or plunge him deeper into despair? It was then that he noticed a small detail. The tone of the email was flat. Had his father simply acknowledged the invitation out of obligation? Was there a hint of doubt buried beneath the curt response? Determined to not let uncertainty derail him, Jake steeled his resolve. This wouldn't be the end, it was merely the beginning. Jake took a deep breath, reminding himself that vulnerability was not weakness but strength, a path that required courage. He decided he would prepare not just for the confrontation with his father, but also for potential scenarios ahead. As he planned, a thought struck him sharply. Perhaps in truly facing his father, he would unearth hidden layers of himself, his motivations, dreams, and fears. Could this meeting mark the reawakening of not just family ties, but also his identity? With a sense of urgency fueling him, Jake pushed aside his fears and began to mold his approach for the conversation. Tomorrow, he would make sure that nothing, neither doubt nor past grievances, would sabotage the opportunity lying ahead. As he crafted his strategy, he realized he was ready to face whatever came, knowing this encounter could very well be the crucial step on his path toward reconciling not just with his father, but also with himself. But as excitement mingled with anxiety, one piercing question lingered. Was he prepared for the unfiltered truths that lay beneath the surface of their long-buried grievances? The clock struck midnight, and the hospital halls lay draped in a blanket of silence, the only sound being the faint beeping of monitors echoing in the distance. Jake sat upright in his chair, the yellow glow of the desk lamp illuminating the pages in front of him filled with scrawled thoughts and unfiltered emotions. Sleep eluded him. His mind was a whirlwind of anticipation and apprehension. Tomorrow would mark a significant pivot not just in his relationship with his father, but in the way he perceived his journey. He couldn't shake the notion that confronting his father was more than just about reconciliation. It was about confronting the ghost of himself he had allowed to fester and drift away in pursuit of validation. With a sigh, he closed his notebook, the ink still wet, imprinting the weight of his uncertainties in his thoughts. Driven by the thought of authenticity, Jake recalled the exchanges of his childhood, the moments steeped in misunderstanding that shaped his relationship with his father. It dawned on him that for years he had worn a mask, displaying the professional success that had come to define him, yet hiding the vulnerable son beneath. He began to dissect the very fabric of his identity. Who was Jake without the accolades, without the titles earned in the operating room? He made a list, a stark juxtaposition of professional accomplishments and personal qualities neglected over time. Resilient, compassionate, authentic, he wrote alongside senior surgeon. Praised by peers, workaholic. The realization struck him with startling clarity. He had allowed the relentless pursuit of excellence to overshadow the intrinsic value of simply being human. The impending conversation with his father had unearthed the uncomfortable truth lurking beneath the surface. He yearned not for his father's applause but for his acceptance. Resolute, he decided to invite his father to share in this revelation, to peel back the layers that had caused distance. Anger, disappointment, love, these emotions would need to be laid bare. Standing in front of a man who had once provided him with both inspiration and fear would demand courage. Jake pondered how he might navigate that minefield, how he could reassure his father that the person he had evolved into deserved love, regardless of societal success. As dawn broke, streaks of sunlight filtered through the blinds, igniting the walls with a warmth that felt foreign yet inviting. He grabbed his phone and began drafting a message, not just about the meeting, but also an invitation for vulnerability. Dad, he typed slowly, fingers hovering above the screen, I want us to speak about everything. I think I need to show you who I really am. He paused, chewing on his lip, his heart racing. Would his father respond with reproach? Would he see the plea for connection as a threat? Fighting back his fears, he pressed send, the message dispersing into the unknown. This was a leap into a chasm of uncertainty, yet it felt right. Almost liberating, Jake's day took on a surreal quality as he moved through the hospital, a kaleidoscope of sights and sounds blending into white noise. He was scarcely aware of the stethoscope around his neck as his mind kept returning to the meeting. Surgery rounds were a flurry of activity, yet every smile exchanged with colleagues felt superficial. as if they belonged to a different world. With each passing hour, a swirl of emotions consumed him. Excitement, dread, hope intertwined like the snarl of roots in an old tree. Would his father view this as an opportunity for growth or merely see it as Jake's exaggerated attempt to earn his respect? Near the end of his shift, a message flashed on his screen. It was a reply from his father. The tension gripped him immediately, electricity coursing through his fingertips as he opened the message. "Let us meet, but I don't know if I'm ready for this. Are you sure you want to do this?" The uncertainty lingered. The invitation was there, but beneath it was the unshakable weight of years of conflict. Jake was at a crossroads. Now he had to decide if he would face this daunting encounter or retreat back into the safety of his accomplishments. He took a breath, whispering to himself, "You must confront it." The stakes had escalated, and with them, the trajectory of his personal development. Would he actually step into the storm this time? Would it bring clarity, or would it unravel him completely? Facing his father wouldn't simply reveal their relationship's fractured edges. It could expose deeper truths about who he had become and who he longed to be. The thought ignited a flicker of fierce determination within him. Tomorrow Jake would walk into the unknown, ready to embrace both the pain and possibility of healing. What he didn't know was how deep those layers of truth could go, nor the revelations waiting in the shadows. Would he emerge whole, or was the chasm deeper than he anticipated? As the morning sun crested the horizon, a veil of nervous energy enveloped Jake. The hospital had shifted into a frenzy of activity, but he remained anchored in his thoughts. He moved mechanically through the corridors, the hustle and bustle around him fading into a distant echo. Each patient he encountered, every collaborative discussion, felt like a flash of existence unmoored from his reality. His heart raced not from the fervor of surgery or urgency of care, but from the impending confrontation with his father after his shift. Jake prepared for the meeting with meticulous care. Thoughts waged battles in his mind. How could he distill a lifetime of feelings into a conversation? He meticulously organized notes, points he wanted to raise, emotions he felt compelled to express. Beneath the accolades lies a son longing for love, he scribbled, underlining the phrase until it bore the scars of his anticipation. Moments of self-doubt snuck in swirling questions. What if his father dismissed him? What if the conversation spiraled into further conflict? Reaching for his phone, Jake hesitated. He opened his father's last message again. "Are you sure you want to do this?" With every minute that passed, the weight of that inquiry pressed down harder. Yet it dawned on him. His very act of seeking connection was a courageous declaration of his intent to change the dynamics of their relationship. This wasn't just about him. It was a chance to confront years of emotional distance. When the time finally arrived, Jake found himself sitting in a cafe, a neutral ground that felt both strangely comforting and painfully vulnerable. The hum of conversations and grind of coffee machines served as a backdrop, amplifying his inner anxiety. He glanced at his watch repeatedly, felt his palms grow clammy. Then he spotted a figure emerging from the crowd, his father, carrying the weight of history in his posture. Jake stood as the older man approached, and as their eyes met, a fleeting glance of recognition crossed his father's face, mingled with uncertainty. "Jake," he said, the word laced with apprehension. "I let us sit," Jake interrupted, urgency building inside him. The air felt too thick. This conversation had to escape the prison of their past. Seated, they navigated small talk, which turned awkward quickly. Jake watched his father by the way he fidgeted, the telltale signs of discomfort rising like a tide. It was all too familiar and yet not the same. Here, beneath the facade of a systematic fine, lay a reservoir of shared memories and lost sentiments. Summoning his courage, Jake leaned in, vulnerability written across his features. "Dad, there's something I've wanted you to understand. I've worked hard to achieve what I have, but I don't think I've ever truly shown you who I am beyond the title of surgeon." His father's eyes flickered, momentarily betraying confusion. Jake pressed onward, emboldened by a growing clarity. "I've chased your approval, thinking it would fill a void. But I realize now that I also need your acceptance. Not just for what I've accomplished, but for who I am beneath it all." A long silence fell between them, punctuated only by the soft clinking of cups and murmurs from nearby tables. The gaze his father cast downward screamed volumes. Was he even willing to engage or expose his own vulnerabilities? Jake wrestled with a sense of urgency, fearing the moment would slip away. He needed this. He needed his father to see the son hidden behind the mask. Jake's father began, his voice cracking, but it fell short as he looked away. It's hard for me to understand. I've always wanted the best for you, and I thought that's just it, Jake interjected, urgency brewing in him. But what I needed was not a blueprint of success, but the space to be flawed. The air thickened again, tethered to years of unsaid words and hidden grievances. Jake fought the instinct to retreat, feeling the emotional chasm he had always navigated perilously close to swallowing him whole. His father's gaze shifted back to him, carrying a mix of disbelief and unbidden curiosity. Jake saw the tentative recognition emerging in his father's eyes. Perhaps this exchange could redefine them both. But would the walls built through years of silence shatter today? As he ventured deeper into this conversation, he was suddenly struck with doubt, a realization that emerged amidst their shared struggle. This was merely the beginning. The raw edges of acceptance were fraying. He could feel it. Yet, for every step taken, there lay a multitude of unrecognized truths waiting to surface, forging paths yet unexplored. Jake prepared to dive into a more personal revelation, one that lay beyond mere words, secrets that had lingered unspoken. Would he risk everything in the hopes of building something new with his father? The moment of truth beckoned, and as he opened his mouth to continue, the weight of their shared past hung in the air like a fragile promise, awaiting the courage to be fulfilled. Jake's words hung suspended in the air, charged with the weight of a lifetime, yet the silence that enveloped them felt as thick as fog, concealing truths yet untouched. He sensed the moment stretching beyond his father's reach, as though the past was tightening its grip on both of them. The thought of retreat crossed Jake's mind. Perhaps it would be easier to drop the pursuit of connection, to accept the status quo. But something deep within him resisted that temptation fiercely. I think it's time to be honest, Jake said, the firm resolve trembling beneath his surface. I've had to carry things I shouldn't have, and I need you to know how it impacted me. His father's brows furrowed, but out of instinct or fear, he remained quiet. Growing up, it felt like a contest I could never win, Jake continued, his voice cutting through the thick silence with certainty. Every achievement, the awards, the surgeries, they were only stepping stones to your approval. But it was never enough, was it? I strived for your praise, hoping it would fill the void left by the lack of emotional support. He honed in on specific memories, moments that had defined his childhood, painting them vividly with the strokes of his discontent. The absent hugs during times of need, the quiet dismissals during life's little victories, and those piercing glances filled with unspoken expectations. The compulsion to succeed, to be peeled back for a glimpse of acceptance, gnawed at him. This dialogue was not just a confrontation. It was an extraction of a core truth. His father shifted uncomfortably, but Jake pressed on, fueled by a newfound purpose. You once told me that I was destined for greatness, but I wish you could have seen me as just your son, flawed and trying to navigate this world on my own terms. The faint echo of regret flickered across his father's face, but the older man did not say a word. Each passing second aggravated Jake's frustration, a desperate plea for reciprocity lingering in the silence. He longed to shake the man before him and demand acknowledgement. Why is it so hard for you to meet me here? Jake challenged, the raw edge of his voice revealing the deep-seated fear of continued rejection. I'm not asking for perfection. I just want to be seen not as a legacy but as a human being. He felt as if he were addressing a phantom from his past, as though the father he desperately wanted to connect with had been buried beneath layers of expectations and emotional barriers. The thought that a simple conversation could dismantle those walls scared him immensely. What surprised him was the realization that vulnerability didn't just come from laying bare his own heart. It was also built on the hope that his father would be brave enough to reciprocate that honesty. Dad, I'm nervous, but I want to understand you too. I can't carry this weight alone. I need the truth from you, however hard that truth might be. Jake's words bore the earnestness of a plea, echoing in the small space between them as his father took a deep breath. The tension was palpable. Would he descend into the truth, or would he again retreat into the fortress that had stood proud and unyielding for so many years? The challenge lay before them, the real confrontation, Not just of words but of souls ready to be exposed. What lay unspoken between them? A sliver of hope ignited in Jake's chest, daring him to believe this moment could be a turning point. "Jake," his father stammered, but the phone on the table suddenly vibrated loudly, fracturing the immediate tension. Jake's heart sank slightly as he glanced at the screen. Was this an intrusion or a much-needed distraction? As he picked up his phone, a message popped up, diverting his attention from the deeper conversation he desperately sought. Looking at the screen, he hesitated. Could this be the news that would shatter the delicate moment they stood on? Or perhaps a nudge toward a future that could change everything? He took one last look at his father, torn between the urge to dive deeper into this nascent connection and the weight of whatever awaited him on the other side of the phone's glow. Would he choose to finish this priceless moment, or let the external world sweep him away? Jake's heart raced, his mind latching onto the two paths laid before him, each promising a distinctly different journey. The stakes had never been higher. Jake's fingers hovered over the screen, the bright glow illuminating his anxious expression. The message was from a colleague, a reminder about an important meeting scheduled for the next day. Suddenly, the gravity of his confrontation with his father felt overshadowed by the demands of the professional world that had been so prominently etched into his life. He fought against the instinct to dismiss his father for the comfort of work. Deep down, he recognized this moment was far more critical than any meeting agenda. It was a chance to lay bare the tangled roots of his emotional struggles. But now, as uncertainty draped itself over the conversation, a metallic taste of anxiety rose in his throat. "Jake," his father started again, but Jake's gaze darted back to the phone. The internal conflict raged. How could he prioritize a rigid schedule over the longing for genuine connection? He took a deep breath, resolute not to allow work pressures to dictate what was becoming a profound reckoning. "Dad, please," he interrupted gently, turning the device over to silence it. "We're in the middle of something important. Can't we focus on this just for a moment longer?" His father's gaze flickered with a blend of pride and discomfort. It was almost as if Jake's insistence broke through the layers of anxiety that had nestled deep within him. In that fleeting instant, Jake sensed an opening and opportunity to navigate the rocky terrain of their relationship. "You said before that I was destined for great things," Jake pressed, determined to build on his father's previous words. "But now I'm realizing that despite those accomplishments, I crave understanding more than accolades. I'm scared, Dad. Scared of repeating this cycle, scared of missing out on the person I can be, one who is not defined by your expectations." His father's expression softened, a raw vulnerability surfacing as Jake unfolded the crumpled paper of their shared history. His words were no longer burdened with resentment, they bore the weight of hope. Silence prevailed once more, but it buzzed with something different in electric anticipation. Jake forged ahead, propelled by necessity. "What about your own struggles, Dad? What choices did you feel compelled to make that might shape you into the person you are? I don't want to repeat our past." His father's eyes darted to the floor, a veil of shame flickering across his brow, a telltale sign of an unseen battle. With each second of silence, Jake felt himself wavering between encouragement and the old familiar dread of rejection. But this was the crux of the matter. Both their fears were entwined with what lay ahead. "I grew up under pressure too, Jake," his father admitted, the cracks in his voice revealing layers of vulnerability. "I didn't know how to show support. I thought achievements would provide you what I felt I lacked. But I realize now it wasn't enough." Jake's heart raced. This was the acknowledgement he needed, the bridge toward understanding. He could sense that they were on an untrodden path, one that twisted its way through the dense thicket of their emotional barriers, but it could lead to fresh clarity. "I know it's hard to speak about these things," Jake encouraged, his voice steadying, "but it's the only way to heal. I need to know what it was like for you, just as I want to share my own journey. Can we do that?" The tension resonated, a fractured melody as the moment hung delicately in the air. Jake's pulse quickened with every heartbeat, each second a leap toward potential reconciliation, a dive into the unknown depth of familial truths. Suddenly, the vulnerability swelled in his chest, breaking his carefully crafted facade of control. He felt a burgeoning awareness arise within him, an understanding that his own journey required more than individual ambition. It demanded courage and connection, as if something cosmic ignited between them. Jake's father nodded, a glimmer of understanding flickering through his eyes, laden with possibility. It was a gateway, but uncertainty still shrouded it. What depths would they unearth, and at what cost? Jake stayed grounded, the roots of his determination running deeper as he prepared for whatever revelations awaited. He sensed that this vulnerable dialogue stood on the precipice of profound change. What memories remained behind the closed doors of their past? With every moment the stakes grew higher, but Jake refused to retreat. This time he was ready to face not only his father, but also the treacherous path leading toward his own emotional awakening. Would he and his father learn to dismantle the fortress of silence that had defined their lives for so long? Or would they merely scratch the surface of their shared truth? The air hung heavy with unspoken words, and Jake took a calculated step forward, searching for the narrative in this moment that could reshape their future. His father's vulnerability created a fragile space, a chasm where unacknowledged emotions lingered, yearning for expression. They stood at the edge of personal reckoning, but history has a way of stifling the unfamiliar. What kind of support did you need back then, Dad? Jake asked, his voice a beacon piercing through the gloom of familial silence. I want to understand you so I can in turn help myself. His father ran a trembling hand through his thinning hair, the action reminiscent of years lost for wanting. I needed someone to believe in me, to tell me that it was okay not to be perfect. The confession shattered the years of stoic demeanor, unearthing buried emotions. In this moment, Jake realized his father had quietly carried the weight of unrealized dreams, projecting those expectations onto him. He felt an unsettling mixture of sadness and empathy for the man who had, until now, seemed more a figure of authority than a fellow human. Jake suddenly felt the urge to shift the conversation's direction, reclaiming the narrative not just as a passive listener. Then let us change that, Dad. Let us move beyond the past. I want us to be able to talk not just when things go wrong, but as part of our everyday lives. His father's eyes flicked back to him, and Jake could see the gears turning. He was calculating the implications of such a statement, weighing the possibility against a lifetime of silence. But what if I can't keep it up? What if I fail you again? Jake's heart sank. Was this battle with self-alienation stronger than familial connection? It doesn't matter if it's messy. It matters that we try. The resolve laced through Jake's voice matched the urgency coursing through him. He felt a burgeoning realization of his own worthiness, a significant development ignited by their confrontation. Wasn't it possible that both of them could rise from the ashes of their past? Could the concept of failing be redefined as growth instead of a metric of their relationship? His father's expression softened into something akin to hope. I want that too, Jake. I want to learn to listen, to accept my imperfections. In that recognition, something pivotal shifted. A narrative of rebirth began to take root. Jake embraced the responsibility that came with this profound realization. The clarity of his own identity mattered, as much as the bond they were working to rebuild. And I want you to hear me, Jake responded. There's so much I want to share, my struggles, my dreams. I need you to be part of my journey moving forward. Not as a ghost of expectation, but as my dad. They exchanged a tentative smile, their eyes alight with tentative understanding. In this moment, Jake felt the shackles of fear loosen slightly. Their journey together had been fractured but was now opening to a possibility of growth. But then the weight of his missed obligations loomed once more, threatening to return him to the cycle of anxiety and avoidance. Dad, I have a meeting tomorrow that could make or break my project. It's his father nodded, reading between the lines. I understand, son. But don't forget, this isn't just about business anymore. It's about who you are and how you want to define success. Jake nodded, a plan formulating in his mind. This encounter was far more than a personal reckoning. It could reframe his entire trajectory. As he headed toward the door, a thought crystallized, illuminating the next steps in his development. What if he could balance the weight of professional ambition with the intricacies of familial connection? The potential for change loomed before him, like the dawn of a new day. But first, he would need to make a choice. Could he confront the looming pressures of corporate success without sacrificing the newfound bond with his father? With unresolved questions swirling in his mind, Jake stepped outside, acutely aware of the monumental journey still ahead. Yet, as uncertainty clung to him, one thing was clear. He would not let fear dictate the path he chose from here on out. Would he find a way to integrate the dualities of personal connection and professional ambition? Or would he falter as he wrestled with the complexities of being not just a son but a burgeoning leader? Jake Miller stood at the intersection of regret and hope, feeling the pulse of possibility in the air, as he revisited the cafe where the defining conversation with his father had taken place. Time stretched as he navigated the emotional coastline of their recent encounter, each wave of realization crashing into the shores of his consciousness. Their connection, once frayed, now felt like a vibrant tapestry woven from shared vulnerabilities and a renewed understanding. He leaned against the cafe wall, absorbing the warmth of the winter sun as it filtered through the trees, illuminating a path forward. His professional success, once the pinnacle of his aspirations, now seemed merely a stepping stone toward something profoundly more significant: authentic connection. The accolades he pursued had faded into the background, eclipsed by an empowered sense of self, brimming with vulnerability, courage, and determination. To that moment, Jake understood the primary lesson he had internalized during this journey. Achievement had little meaning without relational foundation. No longer would he measure his worth solely by titles and accolades. He would seek validation through meaningful connections, beginning with his father. This shift marked the culmination of his profound transformation. It was not simply about mending a relationship but also about solidifying his identity, rooted in sincerity and openness. With newfound confidence, Jake returned to Maplewood Hospital, the familiar sights and sounds feeling different now. Each patient he encountered made him reflect on the value of human connection, whether through shared laughter or deep discussions. The bustling atmosphere felt invigorating rather than isolating, a medium where he could learn to incorporate his freshly refined identity into his role as a surgeon and ASON. As the days turned into weeks, the upcoming major project at the hospital loomed large, a critical opportunity to lead his department's surgical innovations forward. But this time, as he prepared for the crucial meeting that could define his trajectory, he did so with a fresh perspective. He no longer equated success solely with professional admiration. He recognized the need for balance between yielding results and nurturing the relationships surrounding him. Jake meticulously prepared a presentation that not only showcased surgical advances but also stressed the significance of teamwork and personal ties within the department. He sought to empower his colleagues, reminding them that their combined efforts could forge a pathway to success that did not exist in isolation. On the day of the meeting, his heart raced, not from anxiety but from anticipation of demonstrating his evolving vision. As he addressed the team, Jake spoke passionately about collaboration, empathy, and shared aspirations. The room felt charged with potential, their eyes finding sparks of resonance within his words. As discussions evolved into brainstorming sessions fueled by optimism, he embraced the feeling of unity, an emblem of growth illuminated by shared struggles and triumphs. After the meeting, his supervisor approached him, eyes alight with admiration. "Jake, that was some powerful insight. Your ability to connect ideas with genuine purpose will reshape our department. You're becoming a true leader." At that moment he realized how far he had come. This achievement was not just about the merit of the project. It represented an accomplishment rooted in authenticity. He had bridged the gap between his past and present, proving to himself that he could embrace vulnerability while still stepping confidently into his professional roles. Flushed with recognition and solid confidence, Jake knew he was on a path that merged personal fulfillment with professional aspirations. Conquering the sense of isolation that once consumed him, he found strength in relationships both with his father and his colleagues. The realization that vulnerability and strength could coexist paved the way for his future, one interconnected with meaningful moments and genuine appreciation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of warmth, Jake felt a wellspring of gratitude bloom within him. He was a son, a man, and a burgeoning leader, each piece of his identity more vibrant than the last. The moments he once cowered away from were now the very moments fueling his transformation. This culmination was not merely an ending, but the dawn of a journey where he would thrive amidst challenges, forever championing vulnerability over isolation. With clarity in his heart, Jake stepped into the world beyond the hospital doors, ready to embrace all that he had achieved, proving to himself that reconciliation could spark not only individual growth but serve as a beacon for others, creating a legacy far richer than accolades alone. Now is the time for you to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed this channel's algorithm, and let it reach those who need to hear these powerful narratives. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who would benefit from witnessing this impactful conclusion. Your support is crucial. Show that you understand the importance of personal overcoming stories.